Coming up on Car Advice, disruption in the auto industry, John Satari shares Deloitte Australia's latest insights into the rapidly changing face of new car sales in Australia.
Manufacturer drive experiences. Learn how to safely take your performance car or off-roader to the limit in the safest environment possible.
And drop-top convertibles, are there really any alternatives to the Mazda MX-5?
Welcome to Car Advice. I'm Trent, Nikolic. Thank you again for joining us. With me at the desk, Paul Maric.
Hello, mates.
Good evening, mate. We've got another big show for you this evening, including some really fascinating insights into the changing face of new cars in Australia with John Satari. We're going to talk about taking your car to the limit at manufacturer drive days and competitors to the Mazda MX-5. Are there any? That's the question. We'll try to answer that. First up, though, Hyundai's recently announced a new pickup for the US. And Paul, my question is, why not for Australia? That's what everyone wants to know.
I just don't understand this. And the thing I find even more confusing is that's the concept. It's called the Santa Cruz. Have a look at the size of it. Yeah. Last time I was in the States, pickup trucks came in the size of small houses.
That'd be a compact.
It's ridiculous. It's tiny. So it's almost ironic that they're not doing that for Australia, but they will do it for the US. And we have spoken to the Australian arm of Hyundai, and they have said that they're pushing as hard as they possibly can for a dual cab ute in Australia. But for them, they want to get it right. It can't be a half-cocked thing.
No, it can't be.
It has to be a load-carrying ute, dual cab, and also capable off-road, and capable of a 5-year warranty. So,
well, that's the other thing. And, you know, if we look at Hyundai specifically as a case study, the last vehicles they brought to Australia, like updated Santa Fe, i30N really sticks out. Yep. They've done it absolutely right from the outset. And you're right, they need to do that with this thing, because if it's half-baked, you know, the market's crazy for dual cab utes, as we've said. I think the market wants a Hyundai dual cab ute. I really do, but they've got to get it right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be keen to see if it works in the US, and if it does, eventually it will come to Australia, but they need it here urgently because ute sales in Australia are currently going gangbusters, and we need to have a ute from Hyundai and Kia here right now.
Fingers crossed it happens sooner rather than later. Here's an interesting news story that people who think about forward tech will really like. Local council in Melbourne's partnering with Toyota on a hydrogen and electric vehicle test. And, you know, viewers will know that we spoke a couple of weeks ago about hydrogen specifically being really, really effective for back to base. So just explain what we mean by that.
So Hobsons Bay Council, Good Melbourne Council, is doing the legwork here and running a trial of Maric, which is the hydrogen vehicle from Toyota. Of course, hydrogen is the tech that emits just water, and it uses electric drivetrain there to power the car. And it's a pretty good car as well. We're talking about a range of about 500 kilometres, 0 to 100 k's an hour in about 10 seconds. So it's not a performance benchmark, but it is a car that is incredibly efficient. And when we say back to base, it allows councillors to go out, do their thing, bring the car back to Toyota's base in Altona, which is just near Hobsons Bay, and then refuel the cars. And now that hydrogen is, I guess they've developed a method to transport it safely and to refuel the cars, it means that we're getting councils that want to have a bit of initiative and to think forward to a green future to make it happen.
This could potentially work anywhere that you have fleets of vehicles that start at point A and then go out and come back to where they started from. It wouldn't matter what type of vehicle they were. And you'll know a couple of weeks ago we spoke to Scott Nagar from Hyundai, and he spoke about the fact that hydrogen is a really smart alternative for commercial vehicles, and it's for that reason. Delivery vans, light trucks, those kinds of things that start at a base and go out. And, you know, we're always saying we want governments and manufacturers to think ahead. We have to give them props for this, because this is really looking to the future, isn't it?
Yeah, Toyota as well. They had to import the cars to Australia, which is at a great expense. So we are looking forward to a future here, and it's certainly showing green signs. What they're doing in the US, though, when we were over there for SEMA, we saw stacks of these on the road as well. So the future will be that people will be able to refuel these hydrogen cars at petrol stations and then use them as a daily commuter vehicle as opposed to a back-to-base thing. So let's see how it goes.
And the other thing too, Toyota's using 2 hydrogen forklifts at their plant down there as well, which are the only 2 being used outside of Japan. In news that'll probably surprise no one, the 8 Series BMW, they've announced they're going to be doing an M version of it. Now, we saw it at Paris Motor Show. It was one of my highlights of the show. I think it's an awesome looking car, and I think it kind of recreates some of that excitement that BMW had back from the 80s and that it needs, exactly, and that it absolutely needs. And I think if any vehicle in their current stable or their future stable satisfies that need for an M badge, it's this thing.
Yeah, only concern though is it's all-wheel drive. I know it'll be a rear bias system, and much like the M5, you'll be able to do drift mode and whatever, but I don't know, we're going down this path of all-wheel drive for the sake of getting performance numbers, 0 to 60. But what was wrong with just having lots of power and rear-wheel drive? And it is going to be lots of power. They're saying 440 kilowatts plus.
That's a hell of a lot.
We're talking about a 4.4-litre twin-turbo V8. So it's going to be a good thing, and I think it'll work well in Australia when we can call it the mate.
This is the mate, exactly. Yeah, it'll go down well with Cactus as well from Citroen. This is the question though. We're reaching a point in performance terms, and we thrash this out in the CarAdvice office a lot, that all-wheel drive really is the only solution for these power levels in the mind of the manufacturer anyway, because we're sitting here as driving enthusiasts saying, why can't it be rear-wheel drive? But the manufacturer has to build this car for the average punter, the average driver who may not understand how to harness that power. However, a couple of weeks back on the show, we talked about the fact that the R8 from Audi in rear-wheel drive, not all-wheel drive, is probably the one that you want. So it's a really interesting philosophical difference, isn't it?
It's a marketing thing, because they don't want Mercedes-Benz coming out with their version of that car and going, oh, well, we're a full second quicker to 100. No one cares. It's all about how it feels to drive, and we're now going down that path of just one-upping each other. And I'm sure it'll be great to drive, but I just hope it has the emotion behind the wheel. It's fast and noise. We need some more noise from BMW.
Noise. Absolutely. Look, that's an interesting one we'd like to hear from you on. Let us know whether, at this level of performance, you need all-wheel drive, or would you rather that the manufacturers stayed with the traditional rear-wheel drive platform? At CarAdvice, we concentrate a hell of a lot on test driving all of the newest vehicles, but one thing we don't spend so much time talking about is actually selling them. We've got plenty of opinions on selling them. So we have at the desk with us this evening John Statari from Deloitte Automotive. Good evening, mate.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here. First of all, can you just tell us exactly what Deloitte is and does and what you do there, please?
We collect financials from about 800 dealers across Australia and New Zealand on a monthly basis. So we can see trends in terms of sales, profitability, and what's happening with the logistics, the way vehicles are sold. And we're in very interesting times at the moment, I'm sure you'd agree.
Absolutely.
And we're on the cusp of that transition from really a transactional economy into the experience economy.
A lot of people say that dealers work on really short margins. Is that the case, or are dealers swimming in money?
If you look at the industry at the moment, you would be forgiven for thinking that times would never be better. You know, you've got the economic fundamentals, low unemployment, low inflation, fueling low interest rates, which means cars are more affordable.
And record vehicle sales.
And that is fueling the record vehicle sales. And up to 2015, and we've been collecting financials for 20 years now, so we've got a comprehensive database that we can look back at. Up to 2015, you saw a direct correlation between increasing sales and increasing returns for dealers. But 2015 saw a break of that correlation, and we've seen profit in decline in terms of percentage return on sales, so the amount of money they keep from every dollar of revenue that comes into the business. And when we delve into the data, we're actually seeing that new vehicle gross, so the difference between what a dealer pays the vehicle for and what they sell it for, is in decline. And that, in most cases, is now getting down to under $100. So
are you serious?
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. And look, it's an interesting philosophical argument, because it's very easy to dealer bash, either when you're in the industry test driving cars like we do, or when you're out there buying them as a consumer. And people wear it as a badge of honour. You know, they say, I went in to buy a car and I started the dealer off at 60 grand and I beat him down or her down to 50 grand. We don't do that with anything else. You don't go into a department store and say, oh, the jeans were $150 and I beat them down to 100. It's a really interesting philosophical argument. Yeah, you're a one-off. But it's a really interesting philosophical argument. And at CarAdvice, we've been thrashing out the model that Toyota have set up in New Zealand, which is, if I understand it correctly, Toyota owns the vehicle inventory rather than the dealer owning the inventory. Is that the way of the future, and can that work in Australia?
I think it's too early to tell whether it's the way of the future, but I have to say there's a lot of OEMs, manufacturers, that are looking at that model to see if that is a step into the future, because we can't continue to go the way we are now. The cost of real estate is escalating, especially in major capital cities. You can't have the footprint you had in the past.
Is there perhaps a better solution, and are dealers innovating more now, perhaps moving to online?
If you look at industries that have been disrupted, like the taxi industry, hotels, high revenue, low satisfaction with the current process promotes this disruption from external forces. The car industry certainly ticks the box in both of those areas. However, it's not easy to penetrate the new car market. You've got an environment where you transact on the vehicle, but you've also got a mechanism to buy that vehicle back in 4 years, 5 years. Very few industries buy back what they sell in 4 or 5 years. Plus, you have to service the vehicles.
Is it potentially more than just disrupting? You're actually just looking for a better customer service experience to get people into these dealerships.
I have to say the Toyota model, agency model in New Zealand is focused on taking away the transaction environment into a customer experience environment. So that's the biggest shift. It's not just Toyota owning the inventory and dealers becoming agents. It's the reshift of all of that effort in the transaction of the vehicle into the customer experience, so making it a very pleasant experience.
So just first of all, do you think electric vehicles will change the way that we deal back with the dealer once we've bought it? And then could you explain to us how we got to that point where dealers are only making $100 on average on a vehicle?
We publish benchmarks every year, the automotive benchmarks, and it shows about 50-50. 50% of the gross in the dealership comes from the front end, and when we say front end, we mean new and used vehicles, and about 50% comes from the back. Electric vehicles is really going to disrupt, that 30 or 35% of the total gross generated by the dealership from the service department. So you don't need to service an electric vehicle as often as a conventional vehicle. So it really is going to see further disruption to an industry that's already been disrupted, not only from that interaction or the competitive environment, but also from government interference or oversight.
Back to that $100 figure, just explain that, because we often say on the show that it's the second biggest purchase you're ever going to make after your house, and it's staggering to think that on a $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 car, the dealer could be making that little amount of margin.
Who's making all the money?
Where's the money going? So who's making all the money, and how did we get to that point?
So there's two parts to where a dealer makes money in new cars. You've got the transaction, the metal gross, we call it in the industry. Then you've got the incentives that are paid for facilities, achievement of target, and all those kinds of things. So a dealer's not operating on purely $100, but if they don't get those incentives, it's a very sad story.
John, you mentioned earlier changes to financing from 1st of November. What are those changes? Is it easier or harder now to get finance?
I think it's going to be easier to get finance in a dealership. So it's going to be a more transparent process. The insurance industry, although it hasn't been regulated, has already self-regulated in the lead up to the Royal Commission. So insurance commissions were capped at a very low level, and we've seen the impact flow through to dealer financials so far this year. So that's a very small amount of income that's coming through from insurance products. Finance, dealers are going to have to work harder for the same amount, is the way I would sum it up. They're going to have to sell more contracts per vehicle retailed than they did in the past to earn the same amount of income.
And Joe Bloggs over there at home wants to buy a car. You're the man with all the inside knowledge. What is the best way to get a car and get a good price on it? Is there a time of the month to do it? Is there a particular dealer you need to go to? What is the best way to get a good deal on the car?
I think the industry is taking care of the deal for the consumer. We've got 68 brands selling just over 1.1 million cars. And if we compare that to the US, you've got 15 times more vehicles being sold with only about 45 brands. So it's just a super competitive environment. Dealers need to sell cars to make money. So at the end of the day, I think there's never been a better time to buy a car than now. If you go in, there's some great deals out there. You don't need any assistance from the outside world.
John, thanks for joining us. A real privilege to have you here. Some fascinating insights there. John actually has a real job that he has to go to, but we've got his number on speed dial. So if there's anything we didn't ask or anything that you want to know, let us know. Send us an email and we'll try and get the answer for you. I wish I had your job, followed closely by that's not a real job. They're the two things that people tell us about what we do at CarAdvice. And key to that comment is the stuff that we get to do when we drive on racetracks. When we're not on the road, we get to test cars properly. However, what a lot of people don't realise is that as an owner of a performance car, you can access a lot of these manufacturer drive days and then test out the capability of your vehicle, in the safety of a racetrack environment, not on the road.
I've personally done a BMW M Day where if you own an M car, you get invited along to give it a shot and to see what the cars are capable of. And it is remarkable when you put someone decent behind the wheel and they take you out for a hot lap. You would be amazed at how much extra leverage you have on that car outside of what you know that it can do.
I think one of the messages for viewers out there that for me is the highlight of these days, most of the people that run these for the manufacturers are ex or current race car drivers. So it's very likely that you'll turn up and you'll see one of the support drivers from Bathurst there running the show, or a guy that used to race GT cars, or a name that you won't see us instructing them. No, we'll be there doing as we're told. But you'll see actual race drivers there who know what they're doing, and it's a real highlight because you get to hang out for the day with people who know what they're doing and are super fast. But the things you pick up from them are incredible. Just things like vehicle positioning and when to use the brakes and how to input the steering and understanding that smoothness of input as well. Huge deal to learn how to drive your car quickly. Now, can you give me a couple of highlights? I know you mentioned the BMW one, but they all do it. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, Jaguar, they all do it. I think even, to the level of Ferrari. We've spoken about Lotus with Simply Sports Cars. They do it. They encourage this kind of thing. Give us some of your highlights from the track-focused ones you've done, because we've both done them, and also tell the viewers a little bit about the kind of things that you do.
Okay, so first up is the location. So BMW holds a lot of theirs at Phillip Island.
It's amazing.
Phillip Island is one of the best racetracks in the world, and if you catch it on a sunny day, which is rare, but if you catch it on a sunny day, you will have the most amazing day of your life. It's a MotoGP track, so it's big, it's fast, and you'll head out first on a sighting lap. They'll show you what the track's like, you'll get a better understanding of it. They then set you up in the car and you get to go out and follow a leader and give it a proper shot. Simultaneously, they will have a skid pan experience. So in the case of BMW's M cars, rear-wheel drive, most of them, it means that you get to try your hand at some quick driving in the wet. And the funny thing with quick driving in the wet is slower is faster. People overdrive and it just doesn't work at all. And then the day ends with hot laps. And these hot laps are where you're rarely ever going straight. The car's sideways around each corner and you are having the time of your life. So for that alone, I'd be buying whatever they want to charge for their high performance cars. It is awesome.
I think the big factor there for me too is the things that you can't experience on the road. So it's really easy to talk about 0 to 100 figures, for example. My car gets there in 4.2 seconds or whatever it might be. Big deal. The difference for me that you sense on these experiences is the braking performance. Handling and braking. So the amount that your car can retard speed when you really step on the brake pedal and do what the experts call a full ABS stop is staggering. You can pull a car up from 100 kilometres an hour in an incredibly short distance and you'd never be able to test that safely on the road. You want to know that the system works in an emergency, but testing it in the confines of a racetrack is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you move over to the four-wheel drive stuff, that's actually, in my opinion, even more valuable because while racetracks driving is fun, the four-wheel drive stuff will come in handy because you're rarely ever on the same four-wheel drive track. So it's the basics that you're learning here that you can apply everywhere. And if we use Land Rover as an example there, you will be amazed at what your car can do. We once did a trip across Australia with Land Rover and they did it in everything from a Freelander at the time, which is their entry-level four-wheel drive, all the way up to the Defender, and that included everything in between. And these cars will go anywhere. Absolutely anywhere.
The two that stand out for me off-road are Land Rover with their Land Rover Experience and Isuzu with the iVenture experience that they do. We've done both at CarAdvice. I've done the Land Rover Experience both here and overseas. I've done it at their headquarters effectively at Eastnor Castle. And I think to pick up on a couple of things you just mentioned there, it's understanding the capability of your four-wheel drive. So most people will look at the kind of things that you'll do on one of these trips and just think there's no way I'm driving through that, over it, along it, whatever it might be, and the vehicle does it easily. And then the other thing too is learning how to use the four-wheel drive in that setting. So for example, at Eastnor Castle in the UK, you'll drive a Land Rover Discovery, for example, and water's over the bonnet line. Now you would look at something that deep and just think, I'm not going anywhere near that, but the vehicle just drives through no problem at all. And I think a lot of people who want to do off-roading and want to get into off-roading don't understand just how capable the modern four-wheel drives are, and it's the best thing in the world to be able to experience that under a controlled environment.
Did you listen when you went there? Because you seem to get four-wheel drive stuck a lot.
I've told you before, if you don't get bogged, you're not trying hard enough. And usually, it's following the instructors of the cameramen or the video guys to, I'll get that shot, just drive through that puddle, and next thing you know, I'm being winched out of there. We'd love to hear from you. If you've done any of these drive experiences, if you own a high-performance car or an off-roader and you've done any of these experiences, let us know. Yep. If there's one you'd like to do that you haven't done, or there's one you'd like to see a manufacturer offer...
invite us to one.
Yeah, or invite us to one, we'll turn up, yeah. If you'd like to see one that a manufacturer would offer that they don't currently, let us know, send us an email and give us some tips. Dear CarAdvice, my neighbour has a Mazda MX-5. I'd love to buy a convertible, but I don't want to buy a Mazda MX-5. What should I buy?
I think the best way to do this, because there are countless convertibles, is to perhaps break it up into price brackets and offer some alternatives. Sure. So let's go with sub 60,000 because that's where the MX-5
Mazda
sits.
MX-5.
And the reason it's so popular is because it is cheap.
Buy an MX-5.
Or affordable.
You just buy an MX-5.
Yeah, okay. Or what if you want something different? You've got the Abarth, which is based on the same...
The Abarth 124, yeah, you could buy that. I personally think, for me, I think if you're blokes like us, you probably buy the Abarth. It looks a little bit more masculine.
Yes.
You know, I don't dislike the MX-5 like you do, but, you know, it's cute. But, yeah, I'd probably buy the Abarth. It's under that price bracket. The other one that's a real interesting technicality in that 60 grand, for me, that I think is probably the next best value convertible, is Ford Mustang.
Oh, yes.
Now, the problem there is, though... that the V8's $70,000. You can sneak into an EcoBoost convertible for under 60.
No.
Don't want a four-cylinder Mustang.
There is no way anyone should ever buy a four-cylinder Mustang.
True, yeah.
So the V8 is the only one to go for, and at 70 grand, it's actually good value because you get noise, which is what you need for a convertible. You get V8, and you also get a pretty awesome-looking car that has just been updated with a little bit of extra safety, plus a lot of the kit that you need inside for a modern car. And I think it sort of straddles that line between a car that looks good with the roof on and also with the roof off.
And the noise, the engine noise would be good because then it would drown out you talking about how you don't like the MX-5.
Well, hold on, I'll tell you why I don't like it. Because, like, the roof is manual.
Yeah, so what? At least it doesn't break. It's one less thing to break.
Yeah, but it's... it's just stupid.
If you've got long enough arms, it's really quite easy.
I don't like that.
What if you've got about 120 to spend? Because that'll be the next step. If you go from 60, you move up to 120.
Well...
For me in that segment, I think I know what you're going to say, but for me in that segment, it's got to be a Porsche Boxster.
Okay, I was actually about to say the same thing.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
You get into an entry-level Porsche, it means you get to own a Porsche.
Hey, Porsche badge
no one needs to know that it's the cheapest one they sell, but it's a Porsche
It's still
nevertheless.
a Porsche. Yep.
Potentially, though, a good alternative to that, if you're a little funny about having an entry-level Porsche, is getting the Jag F-Type, because that is the best looking convertible.
It's a stunning looking car. Yeah.
Without fail.
The styling is amazing.
And that price will get you the entry-level four-cylinder, which still sounds really good. It's a Jag, so you'll turn a lot of heads, and it goes pretty good on the track as well.
The other one in that mid-70 bracket that we forgot to mention before we move on is Audi S3. It's you know, it's probably not considered to be as performance-oriented as something like a Boxster or an F-Type, but it really is. It's still a quick car. I think it still looks good, works well in a convertible. And I think that's part of the key too. One thing you can't say about the MX-5 is that it doesn't look good with the roof up. It's one of those ones that looks good with the roof up or down, as does the Mustang. So imagine you're a bit like you and you're all about noise, hot air, and you've got a lot of money you want to waste. Where do you go for the next one?
Okay, so if you have a lot of money to waste, I keep harping back to this, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Driving through the Swiss Alps in a convertible, Audi R8 convertible, having that V10 bouncing off the Stelvio Pass, you cannot beat that experience. Naturally aspirated V10, it is the ultimate convertible, I reckon.
And, you know, everyone's buying a $300-and-something thousand R8.
If they want a good convertible, they will. But that's the thing.
It's supposed to be realistic.
Don't you agree that with a convertible, you have to have noise?
You do need the noise, yeah.
Because there's a lot of wind noise, so you want to overcome that. And someone actually said the other day that with convertibles, a lot of them are moving away from hardtops.
They are.
Which, I mean, there's... all I can think of is SL Mercedes, really, that still has a hardtop.
A few of the manufacturers told us, because you'd recall with MX-5, they went hardtop from soft top and now they've gone back again. And a few of the manufacturers have told us that the reason they've gone back to the soft top is it's more what they would call traditional for a roadster. I agree with that. But the technology wasn't there for a long time. They weren't happy with the noise isolation. They buffered a lot in the wind. They weren't happy with the waterproofing. But they reckon the technology now with the canvas and the way they can build them works better. So they've gone back to the soft top.
Yeah, and you don't need to worry about people slicing the roof open with a knife or something. They are really strong roofs. And they also have inbuilt supports if the car does roll over. And that's a thing that some manufacturers are now doing as well, installing pyrotechnics in the back so that if the car does roll over, you'll get hoops that pop up out of the back that protect the occupants. And if you look back to stuff like your Cobras, but you wouldn't want to roll over in some of those
not
things.
at all.
So modern convertibles are very cool, but we're keen on your thoughts.
Yep.
Which convertible would you pick in your price bracket? Let us know, advice@caradvice.com, because there are so many options out there. And with summer here right now, it's the time to have a think about the right convertible for summer.
It is, absolutely. And if you're a smart buyer, you just go and buy an MX-5.
Or an R8.
Which is where we started. That's all we've got time for tonight. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Thank you, mate.
And we will see you again next week at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday night on Your Money.